She was punished for stealing water, until a human stood in the way. On her world, stealing water meant death. The guards raised their blade, ready to sever her arm for the crime of thirst. The crowd watched in silence, until a voice broke through, a human's voice. He stepped forward, unarmed, unafraid, and stood between cruelty and its victim. In that moment, everything changed. The theft and the red dust of Scorched Haven swirled through the crowded marketplace like angry ghosts, coating everything in a fine layer of rust-colored grime. The planet's 3 suns blazed overhead, turning the air into a shimmering wall of heat that made breathing feel like swallowing sand. In this unforgiving world, water wasn't just precious, it was the difference between another day of survival and becoming another skeleton bleached, white in the endless desert. Kira pressed herself against the shadowed wall of a vendor's stall, her pale blue skin almost gray with accumulated dust. The Zephyrians had evolved on this harsh world over countless generations. Their bodies adapted to conserve every drop of moisture, but even they had limits. Her large, multifaceted eyes, evolved to see in the planet's frequent dust storms, darted nervously between the water depot's entrance and the heavily armed guards stationed there. She clutched a small, empty container against her chest, feeling its lightness like an accusation. 3 days. That's how long her younger brother Tam had been without proper water. The fever had taken hold 2 days ago, and without hydration she knew he wouldn't last another sunset. The public rations had been cut again last week, barely enough for one person to survive, let alone care for someone sick. The depot stood like a fortress of plenty in an ocean of thirst. Behind its reinforced walls, thousands of gallons of purified water sat in climate-controlled tanks, available only to those who could afford the astronomical prices set by the Water Authority. The guards, members of the reptilian Krun species, stood with their energy weapons visible, their scales glistening with the special hydration gel only they could afford. Kira had watched the depot for hours, memorizing the guards' patterns. Every 40 minutes they would rotate positions. During the brief moment of transition, there was a blind spot near the loading dock. It would give her maybe 30 seconds, enough time to fill her container from the overflow pipe that she'd discovered last week. The water that dripped from that pipe, considered waste by the authority, could keep Tam alive for another week. She waited. Her hearts, Zephyrians had too, beating in an alternating rhythm that helped circulate their thick, efficient blood. The guards began their rotation. This was her moment. Moving with the fluid grace her species was known for, Kira darted from shadow to shadow, her footsteps silent on the packed dirt. She reached the overflow pipe, her trembling fingers working to position her container beneath the precious drip. 1 drop, 2 drops. The sound seemed impossibly loud in her ears. "Halt! Thief!" The shout froze her blood. A Krun guard had spotted her, his weapon already raising to target her. In Scorched Haven, water theft was punishable by immediate execution. No trial, no mercy. The authority claimed it was necessary to maintain order, to prevent chaos. But Kira knew the truth. Fear kept the population controlled, kept them from questioning why a planet covered in underground ice caves somehow never had enough water for everyone. The guard's weapon charged with a high-pitched whine. Kira couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Images of Tam flashed through her mind. His small form curled on their sleeping mat, his lips cracked and bleeding from dehydration. She'd failed him. "Stop! Lower your weapon!" The voice cut through the tension like a blade. It was commanding, authoritative, and unmistakably human. A man stepped out from behind a nearby transport vehicle, his hands raised but his posture radiating confidence rather than surrender. He wore the practical coveralls of an engineer, the human colony's insignia visible on his shoulder. Marcus Chen had been on Scorched Haven for only 6 months, part of the human settlement's technical exchange program. He'd come to study the planet's unique mineral deposits, but what he'd found instead was a system of oppression that turned his stomach. He'd been documenting the Water Authority's corruption for weeks, but watching this young Zephyrian about to be executed for trying to save someone's life, that was a line he couldn't let be crossed. "This doesn't concern you, human," the Krun guard growled, his weapon still trained on Kira. "The law is clear." "The law is wrong," Marcus said, stepping closer. His dark eyes never left the guard's face. "And you know it, Vrex, I've seen your reports. You know the authority has more than enough water." You know they're creating artificial scarcity. The guard, Vrex, hesitated. Marcus had spent weeks cultivating relationships with some of the guards, learning their names, their stories. Many of them were trapped in the system just like everyone else, following orders to feed their own families. She's stealing, Vrex said, but his conviction wavered. She's surviving, Marcus countered. Look at her. Look at the container. It's barely enough for a day. Is this what you want to be remembered for? Executing a girl trying to save someone she loves? The marketplace had gone silent. Other Zephyrians, humans from the colony, and even some off-world traders had stopped to watch. The moment stretched taut like a wire about to snap. Marcus reached into his pocket slowly, making sure Vrex could see his movements. He pulled out his water ration card, the enhanced one given to human technical personnel. Here, transfer my next week's ration to her account.
She's not stealing.
She's receiving a gift. That's not how it works, Vrex said, uncertainty creeping into his voice. It is now, Marcus said firmly, unless you want me to upload the recording I just made to the Galactic Council's humanitarian network. I'm sure they'd be very interested to see how the Water Authority treats desperate citizens. It was a bluff. Marcus had no such recording, but Vrex didn't know that. The guard's scales shifted color, a sign of agitation among his species. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he lowered his weapon. Take your water and go, Vrex said to Kira, his voice rough. Both of you. Get out of here before the supervisor comes. Kira's hands shook as she grabbed her now partially filled container. She looked at Marcus with those large, multifaceted eyes, seeing him truly for the first time. Humans were still new to Scorched Haven, and she'd heard all the stories that they were soft, wasteful with water, unable to understand the harsh realities of desert life. But this human had just risked everything for her, a stranger. Thank you, she whispered, her voice barely audible above the desert wind. Marcus nodded, then gestured for her to follow him. They walked quickly but calmly through the marketplace, aware of the many eyes upon them. Only when they reached the relative safety of a narrow alley did Marcus allow himself to breathe. That was incredibly dangerous, he said, turning to Kira. You could have been killed. My brother is dying, Kira replied simply. Without water, he'll be dead by tomorrow. What would you have done? Marcus studied her face, seeing the desperation and determination there. He thought of Earth, of the vast oceans his people had learned to purify and protect after nearly destroying them. He thought of the technology sitting in the human colony's labs, atmospheric water generators, molecular filtration systems, solutions that could transform Scorched Haven if only the Authority would allow it. I would have done the same, he admitted, but there has to be a better way. The Authority controls everything, Kira interrupted, bitterness seeping into her voice. They control the water, the guards, the government. They've convinced everyone that scarcity is natural, that suffering is necessary. But I've heard whispers. There are caves deep beneath the surface, frozen lakes that could supply the entire planet for generations, but the Authority keeps them sealed, hidden. Marcus felt something shift in his chest, a familiar fire that had driven him to become an engineer in the first place, the desire to solve problems, to make things better. What if I told you that humans have technology that could change everything? That we could prove the Authority is lying? Kira's eyes widened. You would do that? Risk making enemies of the Authority? They have connections throughout the sector. They could make life very difficult for your colony. Some things are worth the risk, Marcus said. He pulled out a small communication device. I need you to take me to your brother. I have medical supplies that can help him. And then we need to talk to others who feel like you do. If there's going to be change on Scorched Haven, it can't come from outsiders. It has to come from within, with our support. As they made their way through the winding streets toward Kira's home, neither of them noticed the figure watching from the shadows. Commander Thax of the Water Authority's Enforcement Division had been monitoring the incident at the depot. The humans' interference was troubling, but it also presented an opportunity. If the humans were planning to disrupt the carefully maintained order of Scorched Haven, then perhaps it was time to remind everyone, human and Zephyrian alike, why the Authority's rule was absolute. The first part of their journey would end at a small dwelling carved into the living rock of the planet's canyons, where a young boy's life hung in the balance. But the ripples of Marcus's simple act of defiance were already spreading outward, touching hearts and minds that had long ago given up hope of change. The underground truth. The dwelling Kira called home was carved into the red rock of the canyon wall, one of thousands of similar homes that dotted the cliff faces of the Zephyrian Quarter. Marcus had to duck through the low entrance, his human frame not designed for the compact efficiency of Zephyrian architecture. Inside, the temperature dropped significantly, the rock providing natural insulation against the brutal heat outside. The space was sparse but clean, every item carefully maintained and positioned for maximum utility. In the corner, on a thin sleeping mat, lay a small figure. Tam couldn't have been more than 7 years old by human standards, his pale blue skin almost translucent, his breathing shallow and labored. Marcus immediately went to work, pulling supplies from his pack. The medical scanner hummed as he passed it over the boy's body. Severe dehydration, obviously, but there's also an infection. His immune system is compromised. He prepared a hypospray with antibiotics adapted for Zephyrian physiology. This should help with the fever, but he needs consistent hydration. The water you gave up for us, Kira began, but Marcus waved her off. I have access to more than I need. The human colony has its own purification systems. We're not under the same restrictions. He administered the medication, then helped Kira give Tam small sips of water. But that's part of the problem, isn't it? The authority divides us, makes us compete for resources that should be abundant. A soft knock at the door made them both freeze. Kira moved cautiously to check who it was, then relaxed slightly. It's Jorik, she said, opening the door. An elderly Zephyrian entered, his skin bearing the deep purple hue that came with age in their species. His eyes, though dimmed by years, held a sharp intelligence. I saw what happened at the depot, he said without preamble. The whole quarter is talking about the human who stood up to the guards. Jorik is a former water technician, Kira explained to Marcus. He worked in the authorities' facilities before they forced him into retirement. Forced is a gentle word, Jorik said with a bitter laugh. I asked too many questions about water table readings that didn't match official reports. They made sure I'd never work again. He studied Marcus intently. You're either very brave or very foolish, human. Maybe both, Marcus admitted. But I'm also an engineer, and nothing about this planet's water situation makes sense. The geological surveys show massive underground ice deposits. The atmosphere contains enough moisture for extraction. Yet people are dying of thirst. Jorik and Kira exchanged meaningful looks. The old Zephyrian moved to the small window, checking the street outside before speaking. What if I told you that you're right? That there's enough water beneath Scorched Haven to turn this desert into a garden? Marcus leaned forward. I'd ask why it's not being accessed. Control, Jorik said simply. The Water Authority didn't rise to power by providing abundance. They rose by managing scarcity. Every major family in the Authority has off-world accounts worth millions of credits, all built on the suffering of this planet. But surely someone has tried to expose this, Marcus said. Many have tried. They tend to disappear. Jorik's expression darkened. Accidents in the desert, contaminated water supplies. The Authority has many ways to silence dissent. Kira checked on Tam, who was sleeping more peacefully now, then joined the conversation. But things are different now. The humans are here. You have technology, influence with the Galactic Council. And that's exactly why they'll move against us soon, Marcus said, pieces falling into place in his mind. The Authority can't afford to let humans integrate fully into Scorched Haven society. We're a threat to their monopoly. A chime from Marcus's communication device interrupted them. It was a message from Dr. Sarah Kim, the head of the Human Colony's Science Division. Emergency meeting. All personnel, return immediately. Marcus stood, torn between the urgency of the message and the situation here. I have to go, but I'll be back. Keep giving Tam water every hour. Small sips. He handed Kira a water purification tablet. Dissolve this in whatever water you have. It'll make it safer. As he prepared to leave, Jorik grabbed his arm. Be careful, human. The Authority has eyes everywhere. If they see you as a threat, then maybe it's time they had something real to fear, Marcus said. The journey back to the human colony took him through the transition zone, the area between the Zephyrian Quarter and the human settlement. Here, members of various species mingled in the markets and work zones, a fragile experiment in cooperation that the Authority barely tolerated. Marcus noticed more guards than usual, their weapons prominently displayed. The human colony was a cluster of prefabricated buildings and atmospheric domes, a small oasis of Earth-like conditions on this harsh world. As Marcus entered the main assembly hall, he found it packed with all 200 members of the colony. Dr. Kim stood at the front, her usually calm demeanor replaced by barely controlled anger. 3 hours ago, she began without preamble, the Water Authority issued new regulations. Effective immediately, the human colony's water independence is revoked. All our purification systems are to be shut down and handed over to the Authority for integration into the planetary supply network. The room erupted in angry voices. Marcus felt his stomach drop. Without their independent water supply, the humans would be just as vulnerable as everyone else on Scorched Haven. "This is retaliation," someone shouted. "For what happened at the depot today?" Eyes turned to Marcus. Dr. Kim raised her hand for silence. "What happened at the depot?" Marcus stepped forward, explaining the incident with Kira and the guards. When he finished, the room was silent. "You risked our entire colony's security for one Zephyrian?" a voice called out. "He did what any decent human being would do," another voice countered. "We didn't come here to be complicit in oppression." Dr. Kim raised her hand again. "The question now is not what Marcus did, but what we're going to do. The Authority has given us 48 hours to comply." "What about the Galactic Council?" someone suggested. "They have laws about resource access. The nearest council representative is 6 months away by fastest transport," Dr. Kim replied. "The Authority knows this. They're counting on us being isolated." Marcus's mind raced. What if we don't need the council? What if we can prove the Authority's corruption directly to the people of Scorched Haven? That's a romantic notion, but the people are scattered, afraid, and dependent on the Authority for survival, Dr. Kim said. "But they're also angry," Marcus countered. "I've spent weeks in the Zephyrian Quarter. They know something's wrong. They just need proof and hope that change is possible." "And how do you propose we provide that?" Marcus thought of Jorik's words about the underground water deposits. "We conduct our own survey, find the hidden water reserves, and broadcast the results to everyone on the planet. Show them that scarcity is artificial. The Authority would never allow it. Then we don't ask permission," Marcus said. "Look, in 48 hours we'll be under their complete control anyway. But if we can expose the truth before then, if we can show the people that abundance is possible..." Dr. Kim considered this. "It's incredibly risky. If we're caught, if we do nothing, we condemn this entire planet to continued suffering," Marcus said. "We have the technology. We have the expertise. What we need is the courage to act." The room fell silent as everyone considered the implications. Finally, Dr. Kim spoke. "We'll put it to a vote. All in favor of Marcus's proposal?" Slowly, hands began to rise. First a few, then more, until over 3/4 of the colony had voted yes. "Then we have work to do," Dr. Kim said. "Marcus, you'll lead the survey team. Take whoever and whatever you need. The rest of us will maintain normal operations to avoid suspicion." As the meeting broke up, Marcus found himself surrounded by volunteers, engineers, geologists, even some of the colony's teachers and medics who wanted to help. Among them was Tom Bradley, a former military officer who'd come to Scorched Haven seeking a peaceful retirement. "You know this means war, right?" Tom said quietly. "The Authority won't let this stand." "Then maybe it's time someone stood up to them," Marcus replied. "We've been solving our water problems on Earth for over a century. We've turned deserts into farmland, cleaned poisoned aquifers, even extracted water from the atmosphere. The technology exists. It's the will to share it that's been missing. The Zephyrians might not trust us. We're outsiders." Marcus thought of Kira's desperate courage, of Tam fighting for life, of Jorik's bitter wisdom. Some already do. We just need to give them a reason to hope. That night, as the 3 suns of Scorched Haven set in a blaze of orange and purple, 2 groups prepared for what was to come. In the human colony, engineers and scientists gathered equipment and reviewed geological data, planning a mission that could change the fate of an entire world. In the Zephyrian Quarter, word spread in whispers and coded messages. The humans were going to challenge the Authority. And in the gleaming towers of the Water Authority, Commander Thax received his reports with satisfaction. The humans had taken the bait. Now he could justify any action against them as suppressing rebellion. By the time the 3 suns rose again, Scorched Haven would learn why the Authority's rule had lasted for generations. But Thax had underestimated something crucial: the power of diverse peoples united by a common cause. The humans brought technology and outside perspective. The Zephyrians brought knowledge of the land and generations of suppressed anger, and together, they were about to discover truths that would shake the very foundations of power on Scorched Haven. The ancient secret. The survey team moved under cover of darkness, using the planet's brief night cycle when only one of the 3 suns remained visible on the horizon. Marcus led the group of 12, 6 humans and 6 Zephyrians who had volunteered despite the danger. Among them were Kira and Jorik, whose knowledge of the authorities' restricted zones proved invaluable. They traveled in a modified transport vehicle, its hull reinforced against the harsh conditions and equipped with sensor-dampening technology that Tom Bradley had borrowed from his military days. Their destination was the Crimson Wastes, a region the Authority had declared uninhabitable due to supposedly toxic conditions. According to the official reports, this area is contaminated with heavy metals that make water extraction impossible. Dr. Kim's voice crackled through the comm system. She was monitoring from the colony, ready to alert them if Authority forces mobilized. Convenient excuse to keep people away, Tom muttered, checking his tactical display. No toxic readings on any of our sensors. As they crested a ridge, the landscape before them took everyone's breath away. Instead of the barren wasteland described in Authority reports, they found ancient structures, towers and aqueducts carved from the red rock, partially buried by centuries of sand but still visible in the dim light. By the ancestors, Jorik whispered. The old cities. They're real. Old cities, Marcus asked, bringing the vehicle to a stop. Legends, Kira explained, her eyes wide with wonder. Stories say that before the Great Drought, Scorched Haven was covered in cities with flowing water, gardens that touched the sky. But the Authority says they're myths, stories to give false hope. Marcus activated the deep ground scanning array they'd brought. The machine hummed to life, sending sonic pulses deep into the planet's crust. Within minutes, data began flooding the screens. This can't be right, said Elena Vasquez, the team's hydrologist. I'm reading massive water deposits, but they're not natural aquifers. They're constructed storage tanks built into the bedrock. How massive? Marcus asked. Elena's face went pale. Enough to supply the current population of Scorched Haven for over 1,000 years. And that's just what we can scan from here. The team exchanged stunned looks. This wasn't just about hidden natural resources. Someone had built an entire water storage infrastructure, and then abandoned or hidden it. We need samples, Marcus decided, and documentation. This discovery alone could... A sharp whistle from one of the Zephyrian scouts cut him off. Authority vehicles were approaching, moving fast across the desert. How did they find us? Tom demanded, already reaching for his weapon. Jorik's expression was grim. They've always known. They must monitor this area constantly. Everyone back to the transport, Marcus ordered, but it was too late. Authority vehicles had surrounded them, their weapons powered and aimed. Commander Thax himself stepped out of the lead vehicle, his reptilian features twisted in what might have been satisfaction. Humans and Zephyrians working together to violate restricted zones. The Council will be most interested to hear about this terrorist activity. The only criminal activity here is hiding water from dying people, Marcus shot back. Water that belongs to the Authority, Thax replied smoothly. Everything beneath Scorched Haven's surface is ours by law. Laws you wrote, Kira said, stepping forward despite the weapons trained on them. Laws that let children die of thirst while you hoard enough water for generations. Thax's eyes narrowed. You're the thief from the depot. How fitting that you'd align yourself with these outsiders. He gestured to his guards. Arrest them all. They'll serve as examples. A low rumble cut through his words. The ground beneath their feet began to vibrate, and ancient dust fell from the stone structures around them. What did you do? Thax demanded, looking at Marcus. Nothing, Marcus replied, equally confused. The rumbling intensified. Suddenly, one of the ancient towers began to glow with a soft blue light. Symbols appeared on its surface, not Zephyrian, not any language Marcus recognized. Jorik gasped. The Builders. These are Builder ruins. The Builders were a mystery throughout the galaxy, an ancient race that had left behind incomprehensible technology on dozens of worlds before vanishing. Most of their sites were dormant, dead. But something had awakened this one. The tower's glow intensified, and suddenly every piece of electronic equipment, weapons, vehicles, scanners, shut down. In the silence that followed, a hologram appeared above the tower. It showed Scorched Haven as it once was. Blue oceans, green continents, cities that touched the clouds. Then the image changed, showing the construction of the underground water storage system. Massive machines, operated by beings Marcus couldn't quite make out, boring into the planet's crust, creating a network of reservoirs and distribution channels that could sustain life even if the surface water disappeared. The final image showed the builders leaving, but not before encoding a message into the planet's very structure. As the hologram faded, water began to flow from the ancient aqueducts, clean, pure water that hadn't seen sunlight in millennia. Everyone stood frozen, watching the impossible. Then Kira did something that broke the spell. She laughed. It started small but grew into joy that was infectious. Soon, Zephyrians and humans alike were laughing, crying, reaching out to touch the flowing water. "This changes nothing," Thax said, but his voice lacked conviction. The authority controls nothing," Jorik interrupted. "Don't you understand? The builders left this for everyone. The water management system, it's automated, responding to the presence of the planet's inhabitants. You can't control it, can't shut it off." As if to confirm his words, more towers throughout the crimson wastes began to glow. The sound of rushing water filled the air as ancient channels reopened, carrying water toward the populated areas of Scorched Haven. Marcus activated his emergency beacon, sending a signal to the colony and to every communication device in range. "This is Marcus Chen of the human colony. We've discovered builder technology in the crimson wastes. Water is flowing. Repeat, water is flowing freely. Come and see for yourselves." The response was immediate. Despite the late hour, despite the danger, people began arriving. Zephyrians from nearby settlements, humans from the colony, even some of the other species who had settled on Scorched Haven. They came in disbelief and left in wonder, carrying containers of water and, more importantly, carrying the truth. Thax and his guards found themselves vastly outnumbered, facing a crowd that grew larger and more confident by the moment. The commander made a tactical decision. He and his forces withdrew, but not before he locked eyes with Marcus. "This isn't over," he promised. "No," Marcus agreed. "It's just beginning." As the first of Scorched Haven's 3 suns began to rise, its light revealed a transformed landscape. Water flowed through channels that had been dry for centuries. Ancient fountains sparkled in the growing light, and around them humans and Zephyrians worked side by side, using human technology to analyze and purify the water, using Zephyrian knowledge to understand the ancient distribution systems. Dr. Kim arrived with a full technical team, her professional composure cracking as she saw the extent of the discovery. "This is going to change everything," she said to Marcus. "Not just for Scorched Haven, but for our understanding of the builders, of water management, of... Right now, let's just focus on getting this water to people who need it," Marcus said, watching as Kira helped organize distribution teams. "The authority won't give up easily," Tom warned, ever the military tactician. "They have off-world connections, mercenaries they could hire. Then we'd better make sure the people are united before they strike back," Marcus replied. Over the next 20 hours, the transformation was remarkable. The ancient builder systems, once activated, began restoring themselves. Towers throughout the planet came online, each one opening new water sources. The technology was beyond current understanding. Water that seemed to generate from the very atmosphere, purification systems that needed no power source, distribution networks that adapted to population needs. But the most remarkable transformation was in the people themselves. Generations of competition and scarcity had divided them. Now, with abundance flowing freely, those divisions began to crumble. Humans shared their purification technology freely. Zephyrians taught others how to read the ancient symbols that were appearing on the towers. Even some of the Krun guards abandoned their posts to help with distribution. In the Zephyrian quarter, Tam was sitting up for the first time in days, color returning to his skin as he drank clean water without restriction. "Kira," he said to his sister, "is it true? Will there always be water now?" Kira hugged him close, tears flowing freely down her face, tears she would never have wasted before. "Yes, little one. The drought is over." But in the authority's stronghold, Commander Thax was preparing his response. If he couldn't control the water, he would control the planet through other means. He opened a communication channel to off-world mercenary groups, to corporate interests that would see the builder technology as a prize worth any price. The revolution had begun with a single act of compassion, a human standing up for a desperate Zephyrian. Now it would be tested by forces that cared nothing for compassion, only for power and profit. The revolution's reign. 3 days after the builder technology activated, Scorched Haven was a planet transformed. Ancient aqueducts carried water to every settlement. Fountains that had been dry for centuries flowed in city centers, and the air itself seemed lighter, infused with moisture that made breathing easier for everyone. Marcus stood atop one of the restored builder towers, watching the sunrise paint the flowing water in shades of gold and crimson. The communication device in his hand buzzed with updates from across the planet, communities organizing, people sharing resources freely for the first time in generations, and the birth of something unprecedented, hope. "They're coming," Tom Bradley said, joining him on the tower. He held a military scanner showing multiple ships entering Scorched Haven's atmosphere, mercenary vessels. At least 6 crews, probably more on the way. Marcus had expected this. The Water Authority couldn't maintain control through water scarcity anymore, so they'd turned to their off-world connections. "How long until they reach the settlements?" 2 hours, maybe less. They're not trying to hide their approach. "Good," Marcus said, surprising Tom. "Let them come openly. Let everyone see what the Authority really is. Not protectors, but oppressors who'd rather rule over ashes than share paradise." Below them, the combined human Zephyrian defense force was preparing. It wasn't much. Maybe 300 volunteers with basic weapons against professional mercenaries. But they had something the mercenaries didn't: the builder towers. Dr. Kim had been working around the clock to understand the ancient technology. The towers aren't just water distributors, she'd discovered. They're some kind of planetary defense system. But I can't activate it. It requires something we don't have. That something, Marcus suspected, was about to reveal itself. Kira climbed up to join them, her movements confident and sure. The past 3 days had transformed her from a desperate thief to a leader of her people. "The elders are in position," she reported. "Jorik has them stationed at each tower in the city. And your brother? Safe in the sheltered caves with the other children." Her expression hardened. "He won't grow up under the Authority's rule. None of them will." The first mercenary ships appeared on the horizon, sleek predatory vessels bristling with weapons. They circled the main settlement like hungry beasts broadcasting their demands. "Attention, terrorists and conspirators," Commander Thax's voice boomed across the city. "You have 1 hour to surrender the human infiltrators and return to Authority control. Resist, and we will reduce your illegal settlements to dust." Marcus activated his own broadcast system, one that reached every communication device on the planet. "People of Scorched Haven, this is Marcus Chen. You've seen the truth. Water flows freely because it was always meant to. The Authority has hired off-world mercenaries to maintain their control through force. But we have something they don't understand: the Builder's legacy and our unity." He paused, looking at the diverse crowd gathering in the streets below. Zephyrians, humans Krun who'd abandoned the Authority, traitors from dozen worlds who'd chosen to stand with them. "Today we don't fight as separate species. We fight as citizens of Scorched Haven, inheritors of the Builder's gift, and we will not let that gift be stolen by those who see only profit where we see life." The crowd roared its approval, but Marcus knew speeches wouldn't stop pulse rifles and orbital bombardments. They needed a miracle. It came from an unexpected source. Frex, the Krun guard who'd confronted Kira at the depot, arrived at the tower with a group of fellow guards who'd defected. "Human," he called up to Marcus. "We might have something that helps." They carried an ancient artifact, something the Authority had kept hidden in their vaults, a crystalline key that pulsed with the same blue light as the towers. "Thax had us guarding this for years," Frex explained as they brought it up. "Said it was dangerous, could destroy the planet if activated, but I think he knew what it really was." Dr. Kim examined the crystal with growing excitement. "It's a command key, a master control for the builder systems." She looked at Marcus. "But it's bio-locked. It needs someone with specific genetic markers to activate it." "What markers?" "I'm not sure, but..." She paused, running her scanner over the assembled group. It beeped when she pointed it at Kira. "Her. She has trace amounts of builder DNA. That's why her family could sense water. They're descendants of the builders' caretakers. Kira stared at the crystal, understanding dawning in her multifaceted eyes. My father used to tell stories about the star-touched, people chosen to guard the old places. I thought they were just stories. The mercenaries are powering weapons, Tom warned. Marcus took Kira's hand. No pressure, but you might be our only chance. Kira looked at the crystal, then at the people gathering below, her people, humans, all united in desperate hope. She reached for the crystal with trembling fingers. The moment her skin made contact, the world exploded in light. Every builder tower across Scorched Haven erupted in brilliant blue radiance. The crystal in Kira's hands dissolved, its energy flowing into her, through her, connecting her to the entire planetary network. Her eyes blazed with the same blue light as images flooded her mind, not just of Scorched Haven, but of dozens of worlds, all connected by the Builder's legacy. I can see it all, she gasped. The network, the defenses, the purpose. The Builders didn't abandon these worlds. They transformed them into sanctuaries, places where life could always flourish. But they needed caretakers, people who could activate the systems when the time was right. The mercenary ships opened fire, their energy beams lancing down toward the city. But the beams struck invisible shields that materialized around the settlement. The builder towers converting the hostile energy into harmless light. Commander Thax's voice crackled over the comm, no longer confident. What is this? What have you done? We've awakened Scorched Haven, Marcus replied. And it's protecting itself. But Kira wasn't done. Still connected to the network, she raised her hands toward the sky. The air itself responded, moisture gathering into clouds that hadn't been seen on Scorched Haven in living memory. Thunder rumbled across the desert. And then, for the first time in 300 years, rain fell on Scorched Haven. It started as a drizzle, then became a steady shower. The people in the street stood transfixed, faces turned upward, letting the water wash away generations of dust and despair. Children who had never seen rain danced in the puddles. Adults wept openly. The mercenary ships, faced with technology they couldn't understand or overcome, began to retreat. But one vessel remained, Thax's personal command ship. You think this changes anything? The commander broadcast. The Authority has influence throughout the sector. We'll return with a fleet. We'll take this technology and... His transmission cut off as his ship's system suddenly failed. It crashed into the desert beyond the city, brought down not by weapons but by the planet itself, rejecting those who would exploit it. Tom organized rescue teams, even for enemies. Humans didn't leave people to die in the desert. They found Thax alive but humbled, his scales pale with shock. You don't understand what you've done, he said as they pulled him from the wreckage. The corporations, the water cartels across the sector, they'll all come for this technology. Let them come, Marcus said. They'll find not a single planet to exploit, but a united world that remembers what it means to share abundance. The rain continued for hours, transforming the landscape. Seeds that had lain dormant in the soil for centuries began to sprout, the ancient canal systems filled with flowing water. The very air seemed to sing with life returning. Dr. Kim studied the readings from the towers, her scientific mind racing. This isn't just weather manipulation. The builders created a self-sustaining ecosystem. The towers don't just distribute water, they generate it at the molecular level, pulling hydrogen and oxygen from the planet's core and atmosphere. Can it be replicated? Marcus asked. Given time, maybe. But more importantly, Kira can teach others. The genetic markers aren't unique to her. They're present in small amounts in many species. The builders scattered their caretakers across the galaxy. As the sun set on this momentous day, the people of Scorched Haven gathered in the main plaza. The division between species and quarters had dissolved. Humans sat with Zephyrians. Former Authority guards shared water with those they'd once oppressed, and children of all species played together in the rain puddles. Kira stood before them, still glowing faintly with residual energy from the builder network. Today we've learned that scarcity was never natural. It was imposed. The builders left us the tools for abundance, but it took all of us working together to activate them. She looked at Marcus, who'd started this all by refusing to let injustice stand. A human taught us that compassion is stronger than law. A Zephyrian elder reminded us of our history. Even some among the Authority chose conscience over control. We are stronger united than divided. The crowd murmured agreement, but there were practical matters to address. The authorities' official structure had collapsed, but the planet still needed governance, still needed systems to manage the miraculous abundance they'd discovered. "We propose a council," Marcus said, stepping forward. "Representatives from every species, every community. Decisions made by consensus, resources shared by need, not by wealth or power." "The humans speak sense," Jorek said, his aged voice carrying surprising strength. "But we must also remember this day, document it, teach it, so that future generations never forget how close we came to destroying ourselves over something that should belong to everyone." Vrex, the former guard, stood up. "The authority kept records, generations of them. Evidence of their crimes, their secret dealings. I can get them. Let the galaxy know what was done here. And what was overcome," Kira added. Over the following weeks, Scorched Haven transformed rapidly. The rain brought vegetation. The vegetation brought cooler temperatures, and the cooler temperatures made the planet more hospitable to all species. The human colony's technology, freely shared, helped establish new agricultural systems. The Zephyrians' deep knowledge of the land guided where to build and where to preserve. Messages began arriving from other worlds, planets where water scarcity ruled, where people suffered under similar oppressive systems. They wanted to know how Scorched Haven had freed itself. Marcus and Kira worked together to document everything, creating a guide that could be shared across the galaxy. Not just the technical aspects of the builder technology, but the social transformation, how beings who'd been taught to compete learned to cooperate. "You know, this is just the beginning," Kira said one evening as they watched the sunset from the same tower where they'd activated the defense system. The landscape below was already showing patches of green, and the sound of flowing water had become a constant, comforting presence. "I know," Marcus replied, taking her hand. Despite their different species, or perhaps because of it, they'd grown close during these weeks of transformation. "Other worlds will resist. The water cartels won't give up easily. But now they know it's possible," Kira said. "That's the real revolution. Not the water flowing, but the knowledge that abundance is achievable. That's what they really feared." A year later, delegations from 15 worlds had visited Scorched Haven, now renamed Haven's Gift by its inhabitants. Some came seeking the technical knowledge of water generation. Others came to learn how a divided population had united. All left understanding that the real secret wasn't in the builder technology. It was in the willingness to see past differences and share freely. The Galactic Council, responding to the documentation Vrex had provided, issued warrants for the surviving authority leadership and began investigating water cartels across the sector. It would take years to dismantle the systems of oppression, but the precedent had been set. Tam, fully recovered and thriving, had started school alongside human children and young ones from various species. When asked to write about his hero, he wrote not about a single person but about a moment, when a human stranger stepped forward to save his sister, starting a chain of events that saved a world. Marcus continued his work as an engineer, but now focused on adapting builder technology for worlds that hadn't been blessed with the ancient infrastructure. It was slow work, but every success meant another population freed from thirst, and Kira, the girl who'd once tried to steal water to save her brother, had become Haven's Gift's first interspecies ambassador, traveling to worlds where water scarcity still ruled, carrying both the technical knowledge to create abundance and the more important message that unity and compassion could overcome any oppression. On the anniversary of the revolution, as rain fell on the celebration in the main plaza, Marcus stood before the gathered crowd. "A year ago, many of you didn't know that humans even existed. We were strangers to your world, your struggles. But suffering is universal, and so is the desire to help. That's what makes us all one people, regardless of our origins." He raised a cup of water, once more precious than gold, now freely available to all. "To Haven's Gift and to all the world still fighting for their freedom. May they find their reign." The toast echoed across the plaza, across the planet, and through messages to the stars. The revolution that had started with a single act of defiance had become a galaxy-wide movement. And at its heart was a simple truth. When people stand together, when compassion overcomes fear, when unity replaces division, even the driest desert can bloom. The three sons of Haven's Gift set on a transformed world, their light reflecting off countless streams and pools, off the green shoots pushing through once barren soil, and off the faces of beings who'd learned that the greatest resource wasn't water, it was each other.